So I'm a newbody. It's been a while since I've done this. Oblivion Remaster came out, played it. It's really good. Really enjoying it. Something else also happened though, and I just kind of want to talk about that a bit because I've got some thoughts on it. It's particularly around like the Ethan versus Hassan Piker stuff. Just for context, I don't really know much about either of these two creators prior to recent events. It was I knew of Ethan, I knew of Hassan. I've obviously like heard some of the stuff that he says. It's um, hard to defend even with context. But that's about it. Like this is the thing. Is like context is um, very important, especially nowadays. So I do think like that's one thing that is always important to remember. It's definitely important to remember from the point of view of I did watch the contact nuke on Hassan, and again, the context there is also going to still be important. It did seem pretty damning, but obviously, Hassan was very adamant that it, there were things out of context, and if there were, then absolutely, like, it is good to keep skeptical and keep open-minded um, about someone's point of view. There's lots of reasons that people can create kind of content, especially to challenge another person. So yeah, just keep open-minded is definitely a good way to go about it. But what I would also say when it comes down to it is that this is why for me this was really important, because from my point of view is if I know nothing about these creators, one saying it's out of context, one obviously did a very good video going over a lot of the aspects. It's really important for me to get a good understanding from both their points of view, both their perspectives, and more importantly, um, it will help me understand specifically what was and wasn't in context and so on and so forth. Um, so on that, I do kind of want to just say as well that it is really good that you've got people that are vouching for Palestine and helping kind of spread their messages, spread their word. I think no matter what, who you are, the idea that if people are being oppressed, that they have people speaking out for them, for their rights, I do think that is very important. Absolutely. I don't think you can look at this and say that there's anything different to that. And both of them agree that, by the way. Like, I did not get the impression that either Hassan or Ethan were against the idea of what was going on, um, against the idea of someone not vouching for them. So that is really good. What I do want to do though, before I really go into anything more, so you can determine whether you even want to listen to nuanced points or whether you just want to hear the same bias that you've got, I will just kind of get my first takeaways from this whole thing. I think both Hassan and Ethan had two different understandings on what was being debated. That was the impression I got. Got the impression that Ethan wanted to debate Content Nuke and Hassan, which is what his Content Nuke was about. It wasn't about Palestine and Israel necessarily. Obviously, Hassan's whole personality revolves around that, so yes, it had an aspect of it, but it wasn't really about that. It was about him specifically, and how he seems to be trying to radicalize and promote and defend terrorist propaganda. Whereas Hassan, for some reason, thought that they were debating the rights and wrongs of Palestine and Israel. And it's like, well, no, no. I think everyone, I suppose people are going to have different opinions in terms of what's right and wrong and what's considered right and wrong. I wish it wasn't quite so um, seen as like this big debate on what's right and wrong, and it was just more of a moral thing on being very clear. I think most people, or I would like to believe most people, have a fairly good indication of what is good and what is not good. I know, like when it comes to war, it gets very tricky and stuff like that. Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, you're never gonna debate that. You're never gonna win a debate around that either, because it's such a nuanced, it's such a complicated topic. Like, there's lots of emotions in there. And it's lots of, oh well, they did this, so does that not justify us to do this, and so on and so forth. Like, it's just a pointless argument. It's a pointless argument for wrongs that have been going on for longer than anyone's lifespan that's currently living. Like, you're never gonna get to a what's right and what's wrong in that. Let's be clear, right? So you wasn't going to do it in a debate. He was basically trying to debate to tell Ethan, oh well, no, you should have sympathy for Palestine. I think that was basically what he was doing. It's a bit of a difficult one to really wrap my head around in terms of what he was trying to debate because it's such a weird topic. He were almost saying, Ethan, you can't care about your kids, you can't care about your family because of what's going on in Palestine. You can't be angry at these content creators and what they're doing because of what's going on in Palestine. Like, you can't have criticisms of other people because of what's going on with Palestine. It's his kids, mate. It's his kids. To him, I'm not being funny. To him, to Healer, like, they're kids. No, I'm sorry. Like, to the people like in Palestine, that's not saying like that you're not as important, but it's their kids. It's personal to them. It's personal, and you should care about your kids. You shouldn't just turn around to your kids and say, "I know, like they're saying that we're not looking after you, and that they're called CPS on us and send us human schools." But kids, listen here. This is the point. What's going on in Palestine's way worse. Like that's not how the world works. Like I don't know really what you expected. So I just think going in immediately, their viewpoints are very different on what the debate was about. It is a very strange um, direction, I think, from my point of view, as someone who's just like listening to it. I also think that a huge problem was there were no middleman. It hit a point where Hasan just wouldn't shut the fuck up. He just would not be quiet. He wouldn't. He would answer a question with I say he would answer a question. He would kind of answer a question. He would ask a question, then he wouldn't really let Ethan finish. He barely even let him ask a question properly. Like he was trying to continually kind of control the narrative and control the whole debate. And I just think it'd been better if they had a middle man, especially because they just someone to mute the other person because I think for the most part, Ethan was okay at shutting up and letting Hassan talk. It didn't hit a point in there where it became so unproductive because they were both talking over each other, and it's like, well, now I've not heard either of you. So that is one element that I'm very much like. I just wish they had someone just to mute the mics so the other person could actually finish a question and finish a point before the next person was allowed to speak. Granted, we'd be there all day because Sam just kept going round in circles, and I get that. But I also didn't get the impression that Hassan was even capable of. He was incapable of being grounded, understanding anything from a neutral point of view. I don't think he's left or right. He does seem, from my opinion, based on what Hassan said himself, he does seem to be more of a speaker of Palestinian terrorist organisations, which don't necessarily have the best interest of the people anywhere, as much as they might say it. And he only values people who also appear Palestinian, supporting Palestine. Like you can't support Israel in his mind, like, or you can't sympathise or empathise with them. It's not even like supporting them, but you can't empathise with them. You can't show them. You can't acknowledge them as human beings almost. And this isn't the soldiers that he's saying or anything like that. Like he's saying about general civilians, just anyone that's involved with them. Like suddenly they are lesser people. And yeah, that definitely doesn't seem right to me. like you can have your own opinion. That's fine. Of course you are. And I'm probably out myself here as well. But that's just my opinion on it. Like you're not able to have a nuanced understanding or opinion about anything. And yeah, that's fine. Like that helps settle that side of it. Like I know your bias is very squarely in one direction, and the fact that you're unable to concede or understand something from someone else's point of view at least tells me like if the minute you're trying to talk about being understanding, it's probably coming from a disingenuous point of view. And where that sits is it's not really empathy. It's, if you agree with me, I've got all the time in the world for you, and I can give you brownie points, good boy points for agreeing with me. But that's about as far as it goes. Good boy points. But if you disagree or you don't support Palestine in any way, shape, or form at any point, then, or more importantly, if you show any form of like human understanding, emotion, or principles when it comes to Israel, then at that point you are now. I now don't care about you. You are now lesser to me. Which is, yeah, if that's your viewpoint, fine. Like, I'm not going to act like there's people that aren't. You know, to me that's racism. Effectively, that is extremism. But there are people that are like that throughout the world. Let's not pretend there isn't. So it's just more important knowing where you stand on stuff. You know, understanding where your principles are and where you stand is very, very important. I do feel like the evidence, as you can tell by now, the evidence does point that Ethan's content nuke wasn't only applicable, but it is very true. It is extremely true, and I just felt like it did really. Hasan did nothing but prove that his criticisms were honest. And I'll go over a bit more why I'm saying that, but I do. Like, if anything, Hasan just proved to me Ethan's video was right on the money for a lot of its claims and again, don't mistake the content anyone for Palestine versus Israel. It wasn't about that. It was about Hasan. It's content nuke Hasan, not content nuke Palestine. Right? Let's be clear about this. There's nothing to do with Palestine and Israel. The content nuke had nothing to do with that. Don't let anyone act like it was. It was all to do with Hasan. How he talks about stuff, how he goes about stuff, how he claims to be a defender of kind of freedom and in the Middle East, but ultimately like defends terrorism, and ultimately that's not going to help anyone in the long run. I think that was also, I mean that's what I believe, and obviously I think Hassan disagrees. If he was just talking about Palestine, and that's all he was doing, and that was evident, and he was talking about how they need to be liberated and stuff like that, then like yeah, absolutely fine. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a really positive thing. But that isn't what he's doing. He's vindicating how they're doing it in certain terrorist organizations, like terrorist acts or like acts of terror are ways that are going to convince people. Well, you're not. You're just going to create new enemies. That's all you're doing. Justifying the abduction of some uh, Filipinos. Like he goes ahead and takes that, right, and he justifies it. He's like, "Oh no, everything they do is justified. It's absolutely
He's
fine."
not.
Or I'm sorry, not Houthi affiliated.
So,
He's not. But even if he was, I wouldn't care. I hope you understand that.
Because that's rewriting history.
I'm gonna say this
No,
very
no, no.
clearly
It's not that
to
you cared. It's that
I'm gonna
you
say this
fucking
very
glazed
clearly
them
to
up.
you right now. 10 toes down. Are you ready for this?
Go ahead.
I believe what the Houthis are doing in terms of stopping Israel doing a genocide to implement a blockade on the Red Sea is a good thing. 10 toes fucking down.
and he has claimed since that, oh well, Ethan didn't give a how would you do it. He doesn't have an answer for it. Well, he did for the kidnapping bit. You may have missed it, Hassan, because you were too busy talking, but he actually said, don't kidnap them. In other words, release them, take the boat, release them.
As Donald Trump has done.
Yeah, that wasn't my chief criticism. Man, again, my criticism is that they are kidnapping civilians.
Yeah, I know. You don't like their methods, but you have no alternative method.
I said just do it without kidnapping civilians, dude. It's not rocket science.
Let's get back to the IDF. You said the IDF...
You don't even have to agree with taking the boat, necessarily. Some people won't. But if you do, if you say that boat's absolutely justified, well, those lives aren't. Like, those lives that you've abducted and taken hostage for a year, that's still not justified. You can still do the exact same thing, just without keeping hostage of them for a year. Like, what was the purpose of that? I guess, like, what reason is there that they have to do that? When it does come down to the idea, I forgot this point earlier, but I'll make it now. When it comes down to the idea of like, oh well, Israel's all that matters. There's a reason that he's not on the front lines, and he's not on the front lines. It's not like fighting on the front lines with Palestinians, even though he's got this like very clear, if you're not for us, and speaking for us, then kind of the problem. That was pretty much his whole point. It's not like he's on the front lines with them because he's providing a different service for that group. And as I said, the service itself, if it was just in a voice to help spread awareness for Palestine and the horrors that happen, absolutely fine. But that's not what he's done. Like, he's like using it as a platform to radicalize people in America, and I do think that's dangerous for Americans as well. Like, I think it's dangerous for the country. I do think it's very dangerous because you're now not just radicalizing people that are directly involved in conflict. You're now radicalizing more people that are in a completely separate country against each other about a topic in another country, and that don't necessarily have all the history. They just have kind of virtue points to play against each other. And that's all it is, by the way. It's just virtue points. Yeah, and I just think it's going to spill into America if it keeps going on, in my opinion. Eventually, like, conflict doesn't end. You're not ending conflict. You're not ending the conflict. You're not helping it come to an end. You're risking it spreading further beyond the walls. Like, how is that a good thing? And this is exactly it. I've seen more as the speaker for terrorist organisations. I think that's his role. That's why he's not fighting for anyone. If you really care about the people, you wouldn't want to spread hate into a completely another area, because then if someone from Palestine, someone from Israel comes over from another country, you're now spreading that hate and spreading it into a completely new area. It's creating new avenues of hate, a new stream of it. Like, you're on about anti-Semitism, right? Spreading in America. Well, yeah, but I mean, your voice has only been amplified more recently. So has it been spreading in America because America's becoming more anti-Semitic? Yeah, for sure. But why have they become more anti-Semitic? Is it because of people like you? Like, you're kind of missing, for me, a key ingredient there. Like,
on this issue,
oh my God,
is
please.
an Iraqi Jew by the name of Avi Shlaim.
Yeah, I love this. Let's listen to him.
Okay, let's listen to it.
Yeah.
Jews were convinced that Israel had a hand in uprooting them. After the 1948 war, there was
this is all like ridiculous stuff. So
mounting popular hostility towards the Jews in Iraq. 5 bombs exploded in Jewish sites. The series of bombs created a panic which led more and more Jews to register to leave the country. I met an elderly friend of my mother's, an Iraqi Jew called Yaakov Karkukli, who had been in the Zionist underground. One member of his group, Yosef Basri, a very, very intelligent Jewish lawyer, and his assistant, Shalom Saleh Shalom, were responsible for 3 out of the 5 bombs. Basri's controller was an Israeli intelligence officer
And
named Max Binet.
let's grant that what he's saying is true and that 3 of the 5 bombs were done by Zionists, right? How does that explain 150,000 people leaving the fucking country?
What?
Thousands of years of civilization that have been there, 2,000 years, just picking up and leaving, almost virtually gone. How does that explain that?
If I take everything out, and I just ask myself the question, do I think 700,000 people or more from different locations all decided to just move on their own accord? The answer is going to be no, because people tend to not really want to move around that much. Definitely not to that extent. There's no area, even if it was loved ones, there's no area where people just move about willy-nilly like that. It's a big job moving. If it was as simple as that, I'm sure they'd do it. If they could do something where they know they can just live and exist and be happy and they don't have to worry about people kicking them out again, I'm sure a lot of people would take that deal. But I just think the reality of the situation is 700,000 people don't just up and leave. And that's kind of what Sam was like implying. Like, as Ethan said, you've got to recognise both sides of the story. Otherwise, it's not going to get better. So, like, it's very much focused.
Why are you asking me this question? I don't know. I'm not. Ethan?
I'm sorry, Hasan. Are you unable to make value judgments on situations? Like, isn't that what you do for a living? Do you think that IDUB should have removed?
I don't think it's relevant or that big of a deal at all.
So I love that that's his take there. And when you go further on, talk about the separate tier list.
And Shapiro and me are in the F tier.
On the Loves Sabra tier list.
You're looking at the end. I'm looking at the thumbnail, bro. I'm talking about the thumbnail.
I know, but I first of all, again, I'm making inferences about editorial decisions that other people have made. I'm just simply speculating at this point.
When it gets to Destiny, for me, literally 45 minutes in, there's maybe about half an hour later, they go on to Destiny, and from Hassan's point of view, Ethan's the one being crazy over the sword and this, but yet when it gets to Destiny, he's like, oh no, mine's absolutely legit. Let's listen to it.
You want to tell me what is your evidence that I work with or talk to or have any association with at all with Destiny?
What? Destiny?
What? What? The guy that I talk about fucking obsessively 100 times a day? That is like basically like the Antichrist, the Lord Voldemort, my community? Yeah, you accuse me of working with him, knowing him, talking to him. What is your evidence for that?
Thank you for asking.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Not only is there video footage of you corresponding with someone in your Discord that...
So... corresponding with someone in his Discord that
literally aligns perfectly with Destiny's own Discord offering.
So someone who basically aligns with, which I don't really get. You align with loads of your values seem to align quite closely with Bad Empanada, but you even said, I'm sure you don't agree with absolutely everything he says. Maybe you do. I mean, I could be wrong, but yeah, it's just at this point, it's like, so what? Like, you're saying the sword that you called, your context of that sword prior to the recent allegations was you referred to it as the swastika sword. That was your words. When you first picked it up, you identified it was sus. And this is from IDUBs. This is from IDUBs specifically. It's his channel, and I've just searched this, right? So let's be absolutely clear here. That is your background. This is your office, right? This is your workspace. That sword is yours, right? This is where they are. You're obviously here. Now, you're absolutely right. You can't prove it. Just like you can't prove this. Just because someone in his Discord is aligned with Destiny's views and values. So what? Like, how is that evidence? Let's hear your next bit. Let's hear the next bit.
clips for you to pull.
That sounds like a stretch.
You've also used clips that are unlisted called Hamasabi
yeah.
when making arguments about my virulent anti-Semitism.
Who gives a fuck?
From
I pulled a clip
link that came from a Destiny fan account.
So that's your proof that I work with Destiny.
None of that is relevant.
Okay.
What's relevant is your constant coordination with Destiny's podcast co-host Dan Saltman, who you featured on your Context Noob.
So based on this same principle, let's think about this a bit more logically then. So is he therefore not right in assuming that you have more to do with Rogan's point of view and iDubbbz because you've worked with them? Are you therefore not in cahoots with them and therefore can comment on some of these things that you said you couldn't comment on? I mean, this is your own basis here, Sam. Like, your whole basis is saying that yours is a solid foundation, which you do believe is a solid foundation. And yet, you know, when Ethan said it, no, this is exactly why I'm saying, like, I do think he's gaslighting. I think it's obvious he's doing that. But yeah, it's really poor taste. Really, really poor taste.
So
they are both in the same ballpark at the very least. They're both, you could argue, both conspiracy without actual foundation, and they're both making claims. So, yeah, you can say Ethan's crazy for the other two. Sure, if you believe that, Hasan, absolutely. But don't act like you're not crazy for the Destiny thing. Like, was the content you correct on Hasan's character? And from what I can see, from what Hasan's provided me, because I can only go off what he's provided me here. Yeah, it's disingenuous. He's disingenuous. He lies about stuff. He misrepresents stuff all the time. He does support terrorism. He thinks that because you can't think of a better way of doing something, then there's no better way of then that's the best way of doing it. By the way, Dan, by the way, I felt like H3 as a whole actually did a good job at letting them both submit clips, both make points. Like, I think the production team did a really good job at trying to do it. Let's say if Dan just had a mute button for them both, that's all that'd be needed. Just let Dan mute the other person, and this would have fixed a lot of the issues. It just needs to know when to mute them, which is when the point's finished, and that's it. Because it just interrupts all the time, Sam specifically. But as I said, Ethan also does it later on. They just talk over each other. So it's hard to hear what they're saying. Worst bit is when they're showing clips and Hasan's talking over clips. It's like, come on, man, shut the fuck up.